Hi all, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I last posted something for obvious COVID-19 related reasons. In all honesty, there hasn't been anything on the horizon, any new figures that I can bring to you. Everything's been pushed back, put on hold or indefinitely, or I'll touch on that at the end of the video. Actually, I've got a few things I want to discuss, but I have obviously picked this thing up here, this little curio piece, which is Blue Lobster's X-Frank, their take on Autobot X from the Season 2 Episode 1 Autobot Spike. It's not a Transformer, it's not even a traditional Masterpiece style figure, but I'll go over that in some more detail as we move on. But there hasn't been a lot coming out, as I said. This guy, I think, was released earlier in the year, maybe end of last year, I forget now. The initial renders look really good, especially when compared to X-Transbot's version of the figure, which doesn't look anywhere near as cartoon accurate as this. The only difference being that this is not a metallic figure, it's a PVC figure, and it's more of a statue with some articulation than it is a full-on articulated figure. The price that it was originally released at I thought was prohibitively expensive for something like that. It just wasn't worth the money, but it was recently marked down at TFSE, so I think it was something like £17.99 plus shipping, so somewhere between 22 and 23 quid delivered. And at that price I thought, I haven't bought anything for 3 months, it's worth a punt. So this is just going to be a fairly quick video because there's not a whole amount of detail to go into on this one, but I thought it might be worth showing someone, because there's bound to be someone out there like me who was interested in this figure but didn't like the price and would be maybe happy to pick it up at the reduced price. So let's take a look at the box to start off with. It's actually some pretty nice artwork. It showcases the figure reasonably well, I think. It looks great from the front. You can see it's pretty damn cartoon accurate. It's maybe perhaps a tad brighter in areas than the toon was, but that's probably owing just as much to the toon being kind of degraded over time as it is to the colour choices. I think the animation model that I've seen looks very similar to this. And I've never heard of Blue Lobster before. I don't know if they're a new company that will deliver more of these style figures or whether this was a one-off, but you can see from the box it's got some decent imagery on it. It looks quite cool. You've got Autobot-X there, and he's there with Sparkplug. Gives you a nice all-round view of the figure as well. He's there with Wheeljack with Frankenstein in the background, which is quite a nice touch. And yeah, I mean, from the box you'd be forgiven for thinking this is a fully articulated Transformers toy, but we will see otherwise as we move on. Anyway, that's the box out of the way. Let's get onto the figure itself. And here we go. I've already removed it, as you can see. And yeah, at first glance, it looks the part. I certainly think it does. It's a tricky one because I'm really into the toon aesthetic, as you'll know if you watch my channel. And this really suits that aesthetic. It's sort of hyper toon accurate, I think. And I mean, there are a few deviations which I'll go over, but on the whole, it looks really close to the animation model. The pieces I really like about it are the head sculpt, which I'll give you a closer look at in a second, and just the way they've managed to capture that proper toon vibe by making it quite flat, and all the colours are quite primary, and it just looks really nice. It looks like it leapt off the screen to me. It's a really nice sculpt. I think we've got some camera drift again. Sorry, just give me a second to sort that. It's so annoying. No matter what I do, the camera always seems to have a mind of its own during these setups. I don't touch it, but then it just wanders. It's very strange. Anyway, that aside, let's take a sort of closer 360 look at him. Obviously there he is from the front, from the side, and then we'll have a look from the back. And then the other side, and then back around again. Now, as I mentioned, this is a PVC figure rather than well, I guess they're all plastic, but this is not the usual kind of plastic you would find in a Transformers figure. It's a lot softer, squishier, dare I say it, and it's obviously more of a statue than it is a fully functional figure. And I'll sort of demonstrate that now. Essentially, it looks great in this pose, but only parts of the body are articulated. So sadly, there is no articulation below the waist. So the waist doesn't move, the legs are immobile. There is a little bit of play in them, just owing to the material, but you can't move them at the knee, at the hip. There's no obvious ankle tilt, and it's very stiff. It's basically stuck in this slightly hunched over pose, which is kind of accurate to one of the sort of more iconic sort of moments in the show, but it's still a little bit of a disappointment. On the other hand, there is a little bit of articulation in the upper body. So both of the arms can rotate. This one 360, and you have elbow articulation as well, a little elbow joint there. Obviously only a single joint. This wrist is on a ball joint, so that can move. The hand obviously doesn't move. This arm is similarly articulated at the elbow there, although not quite as much of a range of motion, but it's hindered at the shoulder by this white door, which is obviously pegged in, but I'm guessing glued, and there's not a lot of play in it. You can move it to get the door past, so his arm is up, but you can't really get the arm level because it pushes against it too much, and you end up with paint transfer, which looks a bit unsightly. I mean, you can do it at a push like that, so if you really wanted it displayed like that, you could, but it pushes the arm inwards because of the pressure, so it's not ideal at all. It's a bit annoying that you can't do it, so the most you can really get to is there, and then have that arm like that, hinged at the elbow. Both arms actually detach. They are just pegged in on these little pegs here, and they go into these plastic sockets. I don't know how often I should be removing these really, because it could cause that to enlarge over time and make the arms loose, but they go in and out fairly easy. It's also worth noting here that he's got a photon eliminator rifle. I think that's Jazz's weapon on his arm. And you can see there's some quite nice detailing on that. It's quite nicely painted. I'm not quite sure why it's removable, but it is. And yeah, that goes on. That's very toon accurate. He obviously had that in his appearance. Just pop that arm back on. They go in and out fairly easy. Owing to the joint, there is a little bit of play, so you can get some outward movement. You sort of fake it. And the same is true on this arm. I'll say this arm comes out as well. And it's a very similar setup. That's all you've got in the movement on that arm. But it's, as you say, it's nicely painted. It looks the business. And unfortunately, yeah, there is some paint transfer on there from when I did that earlier. Let's put this back in now. There we go. The head, similarly, is on a ball joint, and it's got a decent range of motion. You can go back that far, down all that way, and sort of left and right for the quizzical dog look. As I say, it's on the same sort of pop-in, pop-out thing. And the head sculpt, if I can get it close up and get it to focus, is really great. I'm really impressed with this. It looks like it leapt off the screen. It's nicely painted. The actual sculpt work on the face itself, it's got a real mournful look, which is exactly what you want from this character. That sort of "why me" look on his face. You know, right down to the bolts on his neck. I think they look pretty great. You can see that close up. He's pretty clean all round. Yeah, it's a really nice head sculpt, I think, and it's probably my favourite piece of the figure, just how accurate that is. Anyway, it pops back in fairly easy, and yeah, you can see you can get a decent range of motion out of that. Now, obviously, as a figure, it's not got a lot of articulation, so you're not going to be able to use it in a lot of dynamic poses. But if you just want it as an accompaniment to your Season 1, Season 2 collection, then it looks pretty good, I reckon. It's, you know, once you put something on a shelf, it's stationary anyway, so you can pose this and then just put it next to whatever characters you want, and you're not going to notice that it's really, you know, it looks the part. That's what I'm saying. It looks like it leapt off the screen, so it would fit into a current masterpiece aesthetic. It's not going to look too out of place. And, you know, to illustrate that, I brought a few figures down that are in the more modern aesthetic. Here we have MP, what was he, 20 Wheeljack, I think, the 20 plus, the more accurate Toon Deco, and I think he looks pretty good with him. Obviously this is although it's a Toon Deco, the Plus Deco, it's still an old figure. The aesthetic isn't quite as modern as some, so it looks a little bit out of place. It just looks like an older mould with better paint, which is what it is. But it's still, you know, a nice accompaniment, and I think the scale works quite well there. He was a big bot in the show, so he looks really good next to Wheeljack there. And I've also brought his buddy in here, Bumblebee, and again, I think he looks really great with him. Now, Bumblebee's obviously one of the new hyper Toon accurate, or as close to accurate. We're not going to go into that again with the feet and all the other things, but anyway, the design choices are cued from the Toon, and I think he looks really great next to this figure. So, you know, I'm reasonably happy with that choice. The scale, again, I mean, B I think is a little bit like half a head too tall anyway, for whatever reason, but again, scale doesn't look too bad there. I just want to move him a little bit over to the side there and move him over as well, and then what we can do is move Jackie out a little bit, and the reason being is that I brought the big boy down. Now, this obviously is an MP44 because my MP44 is in a rather large pose. Large pose, what am I talking about? It's in a rather complicated pose in one of my display cabinets, elaborate. I don't want to mess it up and bring it down for that. So I brought this Transform Element OP Leader down, which is the same sort of scale anyway and pretty Toon accurate. And it gives you a good idea of the height difference between the two. MP44 is pretty much the same height as this, so you can see how it scales with that. I think it looks the part, really. It does match the aesthetic of the collection well. Obviously this is just flat painted plastic and a different variety as well, because, you know, it doesn't have the same characteristics as these things, but it does look really nice. It's quite shiny, so it looks pretty Toon accurate to my mind. And, you know, if we take him, you know, try and reenact a scene from the episode, he can look up like that, and you can have him facing Prime, that kind of what's happened to me Prime sort of look. So I think, yeah, the play value is limited, granted, but, you know, the sort of display value is pretty good for the money. As I said, when this came out, it was, I think, circa 40 to 50 quid, which astounded me really. When you compare it to other figures, you can pick up a mini bot, a decent mini bot for that, third party anyway. It just, yeah, I couldn't quite understand how they could charge that for it, so I held off. At 22, 23 quid, this makes for a nice companion piece. It's something that, you know, it looks good on a shelf. It's going to make a nice display piece next to one of my Season 2 bots. I think I found a nice space on the shelf next to Fans Toys Phoenix, so they're Skyfire, just because he's got a big gaping hole next to him. He's on his own in a case, so Autobot-X here is going to fill that little gap. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say really. It is what it is. It's not going to win any awards for the best Transformer or, you know, the most articulated figure, but it does what it needs to do to get that, to evoke the spirit of the character anyway. It looks really great on a shelf. Obviously, if you want a figure that you can pose and take a lot of pictures with and stuff, it's not going to be for you if you need that articulation for dynamic poses. But if you just want something as a little fun piece to add to your collection, something that looks good next to other masterpiece figures, and is really just, you know, a completely throwaway ancillary character that, you know, it's just a bit of fun. If you're in the market for something like that, if you're a bit of a geek, or even more of a geek, as a Transformers collector, and you like stuff like this, I think for 23 quid, just shy of, it's a pretty good deal. And I certainly don't have buyer's remorse. I think I would have at the original price. I'd have been a bit like, it's, you know, it's quite weighty, but it is just a solid lump at the end of the day. But for this money, you know, I've paid more for worse, I should say. So yeah, I mean, that's the reason I did this review. It's only a quick unboxing and discussion piece compared to my usual lengthy stuff, but I thought there might be some people out there who were maybe interested in this figure at the original price, but like me, thought it was too much. And this is more of a heads up that if you head on over to our good friends at TFSE, you can now pick this up for a reasonable price. I say TFSE, I think it's on their UK site, Amiga Lock. So yeah, head on over there. And they're a great company, actually. Of the two main what I would call retail companies in the UK, serve in the UK. I know there are more than two, but there are only two that I think are really big business. Of the two, they have been by far the better when it comes to things like customer service with me. The other one that I won't name was really pretty poor when it came to a defect I had on a very expensive figure. So I've pretty much stopped using them unless I can't get something elsewhere. Whereas TFSE, I've bought numerous things off of them now, and they've been pretty spot on every time. It's so much so that they offered to refund my defective MP44, but I kind of felt bad because they'd have taken a 300 quid hit on it, and, you know, it's Takara's issue. But the very fact that they offered to do that, and they've got me spare parts in the past, so they're a decent company to work with. So I would recommend checking them out if you're in the market for Transformers figures, especially the third-party, the more obscure third-party figures that other shops don't sell. They're a decent bunch. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this brief look, and it can, you know, sort of inform your purchasing decision. I will be back with something more in depth, hopefully in the near future. I mean, I'm pretty rusty. I haven't done this for 3 months, and I'm sure it shows in the quality of this video. But I have on order the not Zeta, now Studio One, not Core Star, now Cell Unicron. That, to me, is one of my holy grail Transformers purchases. I've been obsessed with the character since, I guess, the comics, really. Not even the movie. It was the comic depiction as the, you know, the god of chaos, the Chaos Bringer, that really sold me on Unicron. In the movie and the TV show especially, he was a bit of a silly character. But, well, maybe less the movie, but definitely in the show they reduced him, diminished him somewhat, I think. But from the comics, he was great. And I've really been looking for something that does him justice for years, and nothing has come close. Even like HasLab's crowd-funded sort of War for Cybertron Siege line version of it is huge, but I just don't like it. I mean, the planet mode looks amazing, don't get me wrong, that really does look good. But the robot mode is a mess. It's essentially the ultimate shell former. It's basically a planet with a robot curled up inside, and it looks like it. Once you turn it into robot mode, all of that kibble ends up on the back. It just looks proportionally wrong. I don't like all the greeblies on it. I don't like the face sculpt. I don't like the colour choices. And I really don't like the price, especially when it's not due for another 2 years. Then this, the debacle with Core Star from Zeta, I mean, it was their fault really, doing it when they did. If they waited a little while until the HasLab was crowdfunded or not, then they would probably have had no issues with it, and the price would have probably been better. But as it is, it's come out under this Studio One label now. The price has gone up significantly. I think the original price that we were talking about was somewhere in the region of like just over 200 quid, or maybe even less than that. I think it was 180, but then once you factor up that it's always more, it probably would have been around like the 200 odd mark. I've had it on order since April, and I got it through my regular seller. Unfortunately then things with the COVID situation got worse and the supply chain dried up, and the prices have gone through the roof. Annoyingly, a few days after I ordered it with my seller, TFSE had it for $250, and I was like, well, I've already bought it now, so I'll give that a miss. Then it went to $265, and I was like, oh, well, actually, no, I've already bought it, loyalty, all that kind of stuff. And then it sold out, and then my seller said that it had been pushed back and he couldn't get it, and that the prices were going to go up. And yeah, now I've basically found out that because I pre-ordered it, I'm getting it for $265, but that's on the slow boat, literally the slow boat from China. It hasn't even dispatched yet, and when it does, I'm looking at a minimum of 3 weeks, so I'm still probably a month out from getting it, which is really disheartening because TFSE have started to deliver this week. So there are people in the UK have got it, and they've had it for like $250 plus shipping, and it looks freaking amazing. And I've seen obviously everyone getting it in hand now, and by God, that figure looks fantastic. So yeah, it's one of those live and learn situations. I think it was because it wasn't originally due out until August. I didn't want to drop 200 odd quid on a figure that wasn't due out for so long. It's obviously come out a couple of months early. I think, yeah, if I'd paid up front in in April for June, I wouldn't have been too dissatisfied. So yeah, again, you live and learn. I mean, I can pay more for expedited shipping. I don't know how much quicker that will be, but it's another 20 quid. So then I'm looking at the best part of 300 quid for a figure that was originally supposed to be about 200. I don't know. I might do it because I'm really, really desperate to get my hands on it. It's obviously because there's been a dearth of Transformers figures anyway for the last few months, but mainly because it's the holy grail for me of Transformers, the movie characters certainly, and Transformers characters in general. And that bot mode, Jesus, it is so sweet. It looks like it leapt off the screen. There are a few design choices, like the Unicron's asymmetrical in some areas and it isn't on the toy, but you can let that go when the rest of it is so damn good. The planet mode, not so much. It's a functional planet mode. It still looks good, but when you compare it to HasLab's, then it's no comparison. But HasLab obviously prioritised the planet mode, the alt mode, and worked backwards from there and came up with what I think is a pretty shitty looking robot mode. Whereas this has gone all out on the toon aesthetic for the robot and still produces a decent looking planet. So I'm much happier with that. And I think the scale's better as well. I mean, a 27-inch figure, yeah, it's great, but Unicron's never going to be the scale. I don't have the room for another figure of that size. I've got a 24-inch Omega Supreme or the DX9's Gabriel, and I barely fit that in one of my cabs. So I think an 18-inch Combiner Wars scale, it's going to fit with the Devastator sort of size. That will make a good display piece on his own on a separate shelf. He doesn't even have to go in the collection because he won't scale. So I'll probably have him in robot mode on a completely separate display shelf, maybe with a few other Transformers related things around him. But yeah, as soon as I get that, I will be reviewing it, doing a proper in-depth review. That will be my next thing. I'm hoping it won't be a month, but it could be, so please bear with me. And again, I apologise. I know I haven't been doing any updates for the channel for a while, but I have had a few new subscribers as well. It's slowed down obviously, but I appreciate everyone who takes an interest in the stuff I do, and fellow collectors. I'm always willing to have a chat to people who want to have a chat and enjoy this sort of stuff. So anyway, I've waffled on again much longer than intended, as is usual, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on what I'm going to be doing. And after not Core Star, he's now Cell. After Unicron anyway, I'm going to be, I think, looking at Fans Toys Brawn, their hunk. That will be the next thing up. After that, who knows? And with the way things are going with this whole virus situation, who knows if that's even going to come out or what's happening. I've heard there's been another spike in China, so they might lock it down again. Anyway, I hope you're all well and getting through this as best you can. It's a bit of a pain in the arse, but life goes on and will go on in some way, shape or form. Hopefully we'll get back to some semblance of normality sooner rather than later. But yeah, until then, keep yourself safe. Thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next video. Take care all.